Okay, so this is the agenda today. What is the date today? The 11/15. Basically continuing in Access. And then I'm over here in Access. Just started up opening my previous file. Remember to enable content on the little block or things will just not be happy. There is my Access window. I have the Home ribbon in Access. I have my navigator over here, and I can see what tables I have. If I double click on any table, it pops it open and shows me the data I have inside of it. If I want to view the structure of my table, I can of course click on each column and click on the fields up there and see the properties of each column. Or I can just go to Design View by clicking on the triangle, pencil, ruler picture, and it takes me to Design View, and I can see the structure as defined in my table. Structure is very important in databases. It's like a spreadsheet when I view it in Datasheet View. Click on Datasheet View. It looks like a spreadsheet, but in Access tables it's very important. Only certain things can go in certain columns. So far we've made everything a simple short text, but there's other special things, and we'll be doing that in future databases, giving special limits on what can be typed. Right now our limits are only how long things can be, and short text basically takes anything. Remember, I can see what it is by clicking on fields, and anytime I click on a column, I see what type of data it is there in the ribbon. Everything so far is short text, but the field size is the only thing we're limiting. It's always a good idea when you're looking at data and you're done with it to close it. I can click the little X on the close, or I think I can right-click close that particular table that I'm looking at.
Mr. Baby?
Yes?
The only problem I have is the owner ID one. It won't let me edit anything.
Oh, let's go back to, you can't edit owner ID.
Yeah.
Make sure it is set to be short text and not auto number. By default, I think it was auto number, so that's the first thing I would check. Click on the column, make sure data type is not auto number. Then it should let you enter it. We do want it to be unique because we don't want to accidentally assign the same owner ID to the same owner, to different owners. So we entered some data there, and we can always edit the data just like I can do with an Excel spreadsheet. Just click on a record. I'm not clicking on the cell. We don't call these cells. We call this a field within this record. Although it looks a lot like an Excel cell, I can type it just like it were that, but it's a field within record 01. Now just remember how this one is the only one that is required to be unique. If I try to make this 01, same as somebody else's, and then click off of it, it will say, sorry, not going to do that. And it will give you some very confusing error message. That's one of the drawbacks of Access. Error messages can be very confusing and intimidating. The easiest thing to do is Control-Z that to get back to what it was. Cobb, you had a question?
Oh, I didn't answer.
Okay. Did you get the changeable thing on your ID working?
No.
Oh, let me come check it. See why it's not working. Now you did say enable changes when the little yellow bar showed up, right? Okay, click on fields. It's showing, oh, auto number. You have it auto number, just like I thought. Change that to short text. Okay. Now it should let you enter it.
There you go. Thank you.
I figured it was a auto number problem. Now remember, we can always adjust the columns. Very similar to Access. I can adjust my column width if I want to see more. Double clicking also auto fits my columns to fit to the full caption. I don't need to see the full caption, so I'm going to shrink that back. You can adjust your column width however you like, as long as you can navigate your data. And when you close the table, is the time it'll say, are you wanting to save those changes? Yes, I'm going to say yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
I'm having sign-in problems with my OneDrive. It doesn't like my account.
Well, oh, do you have your database on the OneDrive, or
Yeah, I believe so.
is it not accepting your password?
It says this type of account doesn't work with this particular service, my marchant@emmaus.edu account.
I guess I don't know what's happening.
Funny. Yeah, the funny thing.
So it is letting you log in, but you can't access the data on the OneDrive. Some strange error message. You want to send me a snapshot of that?
Hello?
Sure.
Take a snapshot of that error. Okay, so we have the one table. I think this table, we've entered data, and now we're going to create a new table. So I'm going to, and it's always, like I said, it's always good to close any tables you have open. Remember, click the X or right-click on the tab, close. Just good practice to close things when you're done with them. Now we're going to create a new table. So I'm going to go to Create, and I'm going to create a table, but I'm going to jump right into Table Design this time. Instead of just Create Table, I'm going to create Table Design. And all we care about in Design View is the structure of the name and the type of data that goes in there. So the product, or this new table we're creating, has these fields. This is going to be our patient table. Patient underscore, no underscores, patient IDs. Some people like to use underscores to avoid spaces, because in some computers they're not happy with spaces in names. We're going to allow spaces. Oh, patient with a T, not a D. Patient ID, and then we have the other fields are, making sure I can read this, it's so tiny. Patient ID, patient name, and be sure to get the exact spelling right, because as we work on other things, we're going to need to get the names exactly right. Animal type, breed, oops, animal type is short text,
Show password.
breed, and owner ID. And I'm going to close my design tab so you can see all my fields here. Owner ID.
Do you have a license?
That's also going to be short text. Now let's make sure we have the right data length here. So far we've been using the default length allowed, and yep, I don't think they're having us change it. We may come back and change that, but they're not having us worry about the properties. But you can see there's the field size. The default is 255 for field size. We may come back and adjust that. But a very important comment or concept here is right here in this last column. Now I'm going to go ahead and open my design view. That last column, owner ID, let's add a comment to that. This is the relation, relates to owner ID in table owners. This is why we call databases, and this type of database, we call it a relational database, because one table is related to the other table. I'm referring or referencing, whenever I'm entering a patient, I'm going to give the patient an ID. We're going to be editing that field. The owner is a link to that owner in the owners table. So we call that a relationship. And in Emmaus, we want to be it's a high priority topic here at Emmaus, relationships. It's a relationship between this owner is related to the owner ID in the owners table. We'll be coming back to that because that's a fundamental concept in databases, especially relational databases. Now, Remember, well, I don't know if you do remember, but back in the owner field, that very first field, the ID of that record, that was a special record. We want to be sure that that record is the primary key. And the way to do that is I select that row and click primary key. That makes that row the primary key. That is just a special way that databases then can refer to the data very quickly if that's the primary key. It'll work without being a primary key, but it'll not be happy. It'll complain in many places. You don't have a primary key established, assigned to this table, and I don't like that. I'm not going to be as efficient. Databases like primary keys. Now that we have established the field names, remember these are going to become column names when I view it in Datasheet View. Let's make sure we have this right before we switch over to Datasheet View and enter data. I think we got it right. Just checking to see that they don't have us mess with the field sizes. And we're just going with the default huge field sizes right now. We may come back later and adjust our allowed field size. No, they don't mess with that. So let's put in some data now. We have 2 patients or 3 patients we're going to be entering into the table. First thing I do is I need to switch over to Datasheet View. And when I switch over, it's going to want to rename this table and save the structure. So I click yes. Yes, I do want to save the structure. And the name is going to be patients, plural, patients. And once I click OK, it's going to give that table a name. It will show up in my tables list. And it puts me in Datasheet View ready to enter data for my 3 patients. My first patient is C-1. And tab over, the patient's name is Pause. The animal type is feline. The breed is calico. And the owner ID is O-2. Remember that owner ID is related, it's supposed to be related to an owner in the owner's table. Right now, I could type in any owner and it would not complain. But I know there is only an owner-1 and an owner-2. So I'm going to be careful to make sure I name an owner that actually does exist. And we're going to find out that we can have access, make sure that we do that, so we don't try to refer to a non-existent owner. Then our poor patient, we'd send them to an owner that didn't exist, and our patient would just go wander off, be lost, be a stray cat. We don't want that. So we want to make sure that we refer to an actual real owner. I hit tab and now I'm ready to enter another patient. This is patient C2, C-2. This patient's name is Ranger. This is a canine. And Labrador is the breed. And this owner ID is O-1. Again, I better refer to an owner that exists. And the last patient is F-1, named Fluffy. Probably not a dog, but that's not a bad name for a dog, I suppose. Feline. And Tabby is the type.
Hey, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
What's the second patient ID? Thank you.
And I can double click on any column to make sure you can see all the fields. It'll auto size that column. And I know I don't want to add another column. You can add columns in here, but its design view is generally a little easier to understand the structure. So now I have 2 tables. I've, in comments, established that relationship, but the database really doesn't know about that yet until we learn some extra tools. So there is our 2 tables now. Now we're going to be wanting to use more than these 2 tables. We want a table of, I think, veterinarians and suppliers, but we're not going to make you make those tables. We're going to use a more efficient method of importing data from Excel spreadsheets into tables. But in order to do that, I have to go get those tables, and can you guess where they are?
Schoology.
They are over here in Schoology under our resources here. Where is our data sheet? Is it under homework? Where is our? Did I give you the data files? I need to go get some files. I forget where that link is over here. Let me go back here. I thought we had a link to our data files. Resources based data sheet.
Mr. Manning.
Yep.
Security warning for VBA macros. Active content may contain viruses and other security.
Oh no! No, what are you opening? Oh, because
My access database.
make sure to download it from your OneDrive. It's because it's on the OneDrive. He's complaining about that. So ignore that message, or you can say, go ahead. Yeah.
It won't let me finish one of these columns. It just says enter a value in the patient's ID.
Yeah. Patient ID field has to have something in it because we made that a required field.
Patient ID has.
Let me check. Take a look. I'll bet you entered something on accidentally on the very last row, and it's wanting something to go. I accidentally put it over. Oh yeah, because you. Okay, so you have to just go ahead and enter something in ID. Enter any number. And enter something in the first one as well, because it's expecting something. And now, oh, you can't make it the same number. Okay. Now go ahead, let's go to design view. You want to get rid of that ID field. You don't want an ID field. Go to design view. Right click on the patient's table. Design view. Okay. Turn off the primary key. Click on the gray where the key is right now. Click on the gray to the left of it. There we go. So now we got to remove that key. Click on the gray next to ID. To the left of the word ID. Gray to the left of ID. Right there. Right click. Delete. Now, click the key to make patient ID primary. Okay. Now you can go back to data sheet view. Just click on data sheet view, upper left, upper left, upper left, upper left. Yep. Right there. Yep. Now your data sheet view. Now you're happy. Okay. I didn't notice that you had that extra ID column in there. That's what happens when you go to data sheet view to design your table instead of design view. It throws in that extra field automatically on you. Okay, now I found out where we get that data. We got to go over to data files. Link to data files document. Okay, we got to go there to get we have a special file we're going to import data from over there. So I go to link to data files. And I need to get access modules 1 to 3 from the introductory column. So I'm going to click on access files, access modules 1 to 3, and I'm going to download them to my special download folder. So pay attention to where you download it. I'm going to put it in my section 1, and I'm downloading it this long number access intro mods data. I'm going to save that.
Wait, where is that?
Whoa.
Sorry.
Go a little slower. Schoology page.
Right.
Link to data files. You click on that link. It takes you here. Are you there?
I was there and I clicked it.
And then, did it come up?
It came up in this. followed you all the way here. I was with you there.
Yeah, right there.
This is where it comes.
Yeah, so it's downloaded. So it automatically downloaded it for you. For me, I always set my browser and ask me where it's downloading things. So it's in your downloads folder, and it didn't tell you. It should have said file downloaded. So go. It's fine to have it in your downloads folder. That's a fine place to go to.
Okay, and I can find mod 1, 2.
Okay. So now that if you either go to your download folder, on my browser, I always like to go down here and I can see, oh yeah, show files in folder. And there I see that file where I downloaded to my section 1. It's just handy to put in there. And I'm going to expand that column so I can see which of these huge file names. Some people just like huge, long file names. There's the zip file. Now, I want to extract. I need to get this data out of there so Access can use it. So I'm going to right-click on that, extract all. And it will say, "Do you sure you want to do this? Here's where it's going to go." And it gives me a file. It's going to give me a folder with the exact same name as that zip file. I click Extract. And it sends me down into that folder. And I see I have 3 more zip files that are in that new folder. I only care about Module 1 right now. So I'm going to do that same thing on that zip file. Right-click, Extract All. It's going to create another folder in here named Access Mod 1 Data. I do Extract. And now it gives me this long file name, or long folder name. I can go down in there and see, oh yeah, there's multiple files in here that has Vets Extra Tables, Financial Services. I think we only care about the Vets Extra Tables one. But I don't need to do anything more except unpack them right now. I can now close my file browser that it opened up for me, and close that one that it opened up for me, close that one that I had opened up for me, and go back to Access. And now I'm ready to import the data into my database. It's either in your Downloads folder, extract it, right? Or in your special cs101 folder where I put mine. Now it's up to you to let me know if I need to stop and get back to that. Okay, Access, remember I said Access doesn't like to have things open sometimes. I'm going to just, out of safety, make sure that that's closed and safely put away in my Navigator before I go to now import data from the Access database that I just downloaded. I'm going to now, let's go to External Data on the tab. And I'm going to get some data from a new data source, external new data source, from a database, from an Access database. And now I'm going to browse to where that Access database is. So this is where you need to browse to your Downloads folder, down into that long folder name. I'm going to browse over to my special file that I downloaded it into, down in my documents, cs101, section 1. There's that folder, Access Modules, download, going down and down. There is the table that I want to import data from. Make sure I got the file name right.
Mr. Manning, how did you create the new table? I apologize.
That's extra tables. We'll do the import first, then I can come back to that. Design view. Go to the design view and name it, give your column names. So I'm importing this now from this other database. And I click Open. And I'm going to import. I'm not going to link to them. It has a feature. You could actually link to other files, but this is just asking for a lot of trouble. If that file ever moves, it's going to complain. So I want to bring the data in from that table. The cool thing is, you can do more advanced things like actually linking to a file out there on the internet or somebody else's computer, and if they make changes, you will see them in your own tables. But again, it requires a lot of fancier things that can easily break. We want to bring it into our table so we don't lose it. So I'm going to click do the default import into the current database. I click OK. And it shows me that it has 3 tables over there in that database. And I believe I want to get all the data from there. Yeah, we're going to do a select all. There is a select all right here, but we're going to bring all those tables into our database. I click OK, and no, I don't need to worry about saving the import steps because I want to do this all over from scratch, and it may be wrong the next time I try it, so I am not going to save import steps, and I click Close. And look at that, it brought in 3 tables without me doing any work except imports. So I went to external data, new data source. Anyone need to see that again? You got that? Brought in 3 tables for me now. And if I want to see what's there, all I got to do is click on the tables and I see, oh look, it made up some fake appointments. I can adjust the columns if I want to make it more readable to see everything on one page. I can browse through the data. It has dates assigned to when those appointments are or when they were. Time of day, what treatment they got, all sorts of things done for me by just importing it from. And notice the owners are only 2 existing owners and only of my existing patients. So they haven't introduced patients that don't exist. They are referring to a veterinarian that I don't even know about them. Since I adjusted the columns when I go to close this, it's going to say save changes. Yes, I want to. Let's take a look at treatment costs. Here's a table of all the treatments they could possibly get given to me in the tables. And I can close that. And veterinarians have veterinarian ID. Remember that primary key thing? This is how I refer to my veterinarians, by their veterinarian ID. And I can browse through the data, adjusting columns just so I can see all the information on one page. I think there's a phone number maybe. Or zip code. I do have the phone numbers there. Let's see if there's any more fields. So zip codes, I can always browse over. Oh, that zip code is the last field. So now I can see that everything in the veterinarians. Yes?
I'm sorry. I just got the files extracted. I thought.
All right!
We're good. I can figure it out.
I'm going to come help you. Okay, so we have our tables imported, saving us so much time. Let's just do a little exploring on those tables. I already looked at the data. But I can right-click on any table and right-click and view Design View. And that lets me see what was the structure of that table. And I see, well, hey, everything's short text. Everything looks like default length. But if I come down, oh, look, long text. Email address, they made it a long text. Everything else short text. All right, not terribly exciting. And the default length, 255. I can close that table. And let's take a look at treatment costs. Double-click, see the data. I can go to the home page and look at Design View and see that, oh, look, there's a currency type as the cost. They're using a different data type. Everything else, oh, they did change the field size a bit, but short text, basic data type. That's treatment cost. Oh, and notice treatment number is the primary key. I can right-click on on appointments. Right-click on appointments. That's probably going to be most interesting. Right-click on appointments and go to Design View. Oh, look at that. They're using auto number for the appointments. Short text. Oh, they're using date time for appointment dates. Little more interesting table. And they do put some description in there that I find pretty useless, but it's pretty obvious. You know, okay, the patient, that would be the patient. Appointment date and time. Veterinarian, I would have said this is a reference to the veterinarian ID in the veterinarian table. But we're not going to expect them to have perfect comments. But remember the relationships between these tables, that when I refer to a veterinarian from the appointments table, it's referring to the veterinarian by their primary key. When I refer to the owner, I refer to the owner by their primary key. This is the relationship again between the appointments table and the veterinarians table. It also has a relationship between the reference to the owner. That's related to the owner ID in the owner table. And the owner table has all the details about owner O-1. So there's all sorts of things about not using redundant data and primary keys and normal forms that you can learn about in the fantastic computer information system program, learn about this and become a database expert and make big money teaching people about this somewhat challenging but very powerful program. So we have data now stored, given to us in 3 tables where we didn't hardly do any work except doing the import. Now, let's see what they want to do with that. We may be very close to being done. But first we're going to create just a query. We're going to spend a lot more time in section 2 creating queries. But we're going to learn what a query is. Now that we have the data in a structured form, this is now where the big power of database is. Just like when you go to Google and search for something, you are running a query on the Google search database. We're going to show how queries work, just with some really basic stuff. So, closing all my objects just to make Access happy, and I go to the Create tab, and I want to create a query. Create. And at first we're going to use the query wizard. Then we're going to be wizards ourselves by doing query design. But the first one, we're going to use the query wizard. So click the query wizard, and we're going to go with the simple query wizard. This isn't magic, it just looks like magic because computers are so mysterious. Because we don't allow magic here to make. We're going to list certain fields from our, making sure I'm using the right table. We're going to list certain fields from our patients table, no, from the owner table, which is currently selected. The table owners is already selected as where I can get data from. So table owners is what I want to get data from or query out of the table. And what I want to query from the owners table is the owner first name by double-clicking owner first name. And now it's listed in the selected fields that are going to be shown in the result of the query. I also want to see the owner last name by double-clicking last name. And let's see, street, city, state, and zip code. So I'm going to double-click street, city, double-click state, and double-click postal code. I am not interested in this current query to get their phone or address or ID. So what I'm saying is here in this query, I want this query to show me this information that exists in my owners table. So you think of it as I'm extracting or listing just specific data that's interesting to me. That's what a query is, getting information from my tables. And I click Next, and I'm going to call it, make sure I give the right name. Yeah, Owner's Query, which is a good name, the wizard suggests. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm done, and just show me what you have for the result data. And I click Finish, and it shows me, looks a lot like a table, it shows me that information that got selected or listed from my table. Just like when you run a Google search, it's giving you the listing of information it found, and it's gigantic databases that matched the query that the search term that you had in a Google search. So this is just like a search from the internet asking for this information that I have in my table. And since my query didn't have any criteria except I want to see this information, I am getting all the owners listed with only those fields I was requesting.
Oh, okay.
So this is a simple query of show me some data that you have stored in your tables. Now, if these were tables like an inventory, I would get, without any criteria, I would be listing the entire inventory. Just like for now, I'm listing all my owners. I can always go back and look at my owners table and see the complete table full of my owners. And it's only 2 owners, so it's not very different from my owners query. But notice the owners table had extra columns. The query only wanted to select certain columns. So a query lets you get specific data and specific fields out of my particular table. The criteria is where the real power is. When you do a search on Google, the criteria is you're looking for something in their gigantic database that had that keyword in it. And they form a query that gets that data from their tables. So that's my query. I can close the query now, and we're going to get ready to use the query to create a form. This is the next type of thing we can create in databases. It's a user-friendly way of browsing through the data. It's a 3-click method to create a form. You can design forms, but we're not teaching form design in this class. To create a form, I click on the owner's table, make sure the Create tab is open, and I simply click Form. I'm not going to form design, I'm just going to click Form. And in one more click, I now have a lovely, user-friendly way of editing the data one record at a time of the owner's data. Now, it's not super user-friendly, but I could have the picture of my owner show up. I could have their website, a little thumbnail of their website. But see how I'm only viewing one record at a time with a title next to each part? This is where if you got a job on data entry at some company, you would be using forms to edit data in their databases as they receive customers or something. I've never done a data entry job myself, but I can imagine something like this for data entry, and you're getting information, entering, or correcting data on my users. And I have a little navigation bar there at the bottom, lets me view record 1 and record 2. Now, because this data, it's spread out with titles next to each one, I find that I'd rather just view the table itself and edit it. But sometimes a form needs a little bit more control, like letting our data entry person only be allowed to edit the phone numbers and not the address of the owner. Or not letting them edit the ID of the owner, because we don't want to mess with that. If we mess with that, that could break our relationships in our tables. So in forms, you can add a little more protection on what people are allowed to change as they view the data. So see how I created that form, that owner's form, simply, and I'm going to say yes, save the change, give it the form name owners, and now it shows up as a form here in my table, my navigator full of my access objects. There's one more thing next time we'll create. We can create a report with 3 clicks just like that, and then we'll be done. So next time actually, they don't have us do a report. We are done. The last thing we did was the form. I thought they were going to make us do a report. So we are done with AC1. You can upload that. And next time we'll get started on AC2. We're going to be building on this project with AC2. All the access work, it depends on the previous work you did. So that's ready to upload. And we are out of time. So John had a nice time crashing computers, having issues with his OneDrive account. Did you ever get the OneDrive account thing fixed, John? Did it let you in the OneDrive on the other computer before you blue screened it?
On this one, or
either one. Did you ever get into your OneDrive account?
I did get into my OneDrive. It was not liking the access database.
Yeah.
It was saying it was read only, which is weird. I gave up on it.
Well, if you don't enable that content, maybe it's because it found it on the internet and it has some security protections.
Interesting.
Is this Access Project 1?
Yeah, Access Project 1. Next time, drag it from your OneDrive, edit it on the local, and then you can re-upload it to OneDrive.
Okay.
We saw a problem with something else. Trying to use something on your OneDrive just locks something up. So I'm not happy with OneDrive, James. I forget what it was now. It was